Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. Today is February 15th, and there are just 33 days until spring. Today, we celebrate the man who introduced the monkey puzzle tree to England. And we'll also learn about the prolific plant explorer who was disabled after searching for the regal lily. But he never had any regrets. We'll hear some words about the 1927 expedition to South Africa. And we grow that garden library today with a beautiful book about dried flowers, something anyone can do. And then we'll wrap things up with garden design tips from the award-winning designer David Stevens. But first, here's today's curated news. Today's curated news comes from Tree Hugger, and the title of the post is The Importance of Pioneer Trees for Forest Gardens and Other Purposes. And this post was written by Elizabeth Waddington in late January. Now, if you're not sure what a pioneer tree is, the DNR defines it this way. Trees like alders, poplars, birches, and willows are dubbed pioneer trees in forestry, and they earn that nickname for being the first trees to colonize sites that have been disturbed or damaged by landslides, forests, floods, or clear cuts. Now, these pioneer species are chosen because they grow rapidly and they establish new canopies faster than competing vegetation. So that's why they're so fantastic at being first in. If you look at this post that was written by Elizabeth, you'll see where she talks about the usefulness of pioneer trees. Let me give you some of her top reasons for planting pioneer trees. They help with nitrogen fixing. They stabilize the soil, improving soil aeration and preventing erosion. They also provide organic matter in the form of mulches, and they can create windbreaks or shelter belts to improve the environmental conditions on the site. Now, if you would like to check out Elizabeth's post on pioneer trees, all you need to do is search for the word pioneer in the Facebook group for the show, and Elizabeth's post will pop right up. And if you're not in the Facebook group, it is so easy to join. All you need to do is search for the words Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. And while we're at it, let me take a second here to welcome the new members to our group this week. Erna Deem, Laura Sertic, Alan Frazier, Dana Nejer Lagos, Christy Clementson, Marilyn Vantosh, Tara Ott, Marie Kathleen Gillis, Rick Donovan, Janine Dumas Bell, Andre Baranowski, Murli Singh, and Debbie Wunderlich. Welcome, you guys. And here are today's brevities for February 15th. Today is the anniversary of the death of the Scottish surgeon, botanist, and naturalist Archibald Menzies, who died on this day, February 15th, in 1842. And there's a famous story about Archibald that goes something like this. Joseph Banks had sent Archibald on an expedition, and at some point, Archibald ended up warmly received in Chile, where he dined with the country's leadership. During the meal, Archibald was served nuts from the Chilean pine tree to eat as part of the dessert. Archibald ate a few of the nuts, but then he managed to put a handful in his pocket after he recognized that the nuts were actually large seeds. Well, on the trip back to England, Archibald could not wait, and he started growing 5 precious Chilean pine tree seeds successfully. Back in England, the evergreen Chilean pine trees earned a new common name, the monkey puzzle tree, after someone remarked that even a monkey would not be able to climb the tree. And Archibald's unique introduction earned him the moniker Monkey Puzzle Man. Today, monkey puzzle trees, Araucaria araucana, are considered endangered. But like Archibald, gardeners still attempt to grow these curious trees from seed. And today is the birthday of the prolific English plant collector, gardener, botanist, and explorer, Ernest Henry Wilson, who was born on this day, February 15th, in 1876. When the botanist Augustine Henry met with a 22-year-old Ernest Henry Wilson, he wrote his friend, Evelyn Gleason, to share his first impressions of Ernest after their visit together. He remarked, "He is a self-made man, knows botany thoroughly, is young, and will get on." Henry also shared with Evelyn that he, quote, "would be glad if Wilson will continue to carry on the work in China, which has been on my shoulders for some years. There is so much of interest and novelty." Later the same day, Henry also reported back to Kew about helping Ernest with his quest. He wrote, "I wrote on a half page of a notebook a sketch of a tract of country about the size of New York State, on which I marked the place where I had found the single tree of Davidia involucrata, the dove tree, or the handkerchief tree, in 1888. I also provided Wilson with useful information and hints. Well, Henry and Ernest stayed close, and they corresponded for the rest of their lives. Henry returned to his native Ireland, and Ernest went on to find the dove tree. Also known as the handkerchief tree, Ernest brought the dove tree to England in 1899, and it would become his most famous tree introduction. Without a doubt, Ernest's first trip to China was a resounding success. Ernest returned to England and provided his sponsor, the nurseryman Harry James Veitch, with seeds for over 300 species, in addition to 35 very full Wardian cases. Before he left for his second trip to China, Ernest married Helen Ganderton, and within 6 months, Ernest was headed back to China with another singular mission: the yellow Chinese poppy, Meconopsis integrifolia, and it's commonly known as the lampshade poppy. Well, happily, not only did Ernest find the yellow Chinese poppy, but he also found the regal lily, rhododendrons, roses, and primulas. During that second trip, Ernest's leg was crushed in a landslide, and as incredible as it sounds, Ernest's leg was splinted with the legs of his camera tripod. But the story doesn't end there. The place where the rock slide occurred was on a very narrow trail. They had been walking single file along a mountainside. But before Ernest could be moved, a mule caravan came upon Ernest and his party. And so Ernest did the only thing he could. He laid down on the trail, and he let 40 to 50 mules step over him on their way across the mountain. And I always imagine the surreal experience that Ernest had there, lying in great pain and watching the bellies and hooves and whatever else of the mules passing over him for what must have seemed an eternity. Ernest himself marveled at this experience, and he later wrote, "The sure-footedness of the mule is well known, and I realized it with gratitude as these animals one by one passed over me, and not even one frayed my clothing." Well, after this trauma, it took Ernest a full year to walk without crutches, and forever after, Ernest walked with what he called his lily limp. Incredibly, when Ernest was asked about the damage to his leg, he simply said, "The price I paid has been stated. The regal lily was worth it and more." And after all of his daring experiences and bravery, it was a car crash that ultimately claimed the life of Ernest Henry Wilson and his wife. They were driving their roadster on wet roads when the car swerved on a carpet of leaves and went over an embankment before plunging 40 feet onto a field where the car landed on its back bumper with the front wheels in the air. Ernest and Ellen died within an hour of the accident, but their little Boston Terrier somehow managed to survive. At the time of the accident, Ernest had been working stateside as the Arnold Arboretum's keeper in Boston. The death of Ernest and Ellen shocked the botanical community and the country. Ernest and Ellen were survived by their daughter, a girl they had adopted and named Muriel Primrose, and Ernest honored her by naming a bamboo in her honor, Fargesia murieli, commonly known as umbrella bamboo. In Unearthed Words, today's words are by the English gardener and author Alice Coates from her book, The Plant Hunters. This is an excerpt from her section on Africa, where she describes the expedition of 1927 that was comprised of 4 fantastic gardener botanists. Here's what Alice wrote. Information is so tantalizingly scanty about the expedition in 1927 of 4 gardener botanists so distinguished that one expects all the flowers of South Africa to have bowed down to them as they passed. 3 of the 4 appear elsewhere in this book: Collingwood Ingram, George Taylor, and Lawrence Johnstone. The 4th, Reginald Corey, is gratefully remembered for his bequest of his considerable fortune to Cambridge University for the benefit of a botanic garden, and his magnificent botanical and horticultural library to the Royal Horticultural Society. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Dried Flowers by Morgan Elays. This book came out in 2020, and the subtitle is Techniques and Ideas for the Modern Home. In this book, Morgan updates our preconceived notions regarding dried flowers. If dried flowers aren't intriguing to you, or if you feel that they belong in your third-great-grandmother's steamer trunk along with vintage lace, get ready to be inspired. Morgan brings preserved florals out of the past and into the modern home. Selected for their color, texture, and architectural interest, Morgan's top 30 picks for blooms continue to look incredible after being preserved through drying or pressing. In addition, Morgan showcases 15 projects that feature dried flowers for everything from wreaths and wall art to terrariums and flower crowns. This book is 144 pages of preserved blossoms that will enhance your home with everlasting beauty. You can get a copy of Dried Flowers by Morgan Elays and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $10. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day February 15th in 1992 that the Vancouver Sun shared a story by Steve Weissel called Break Outdoor Spaces into Series of Small Rooms. Steve's article featured David Stevens, one of England's leading garden designers and the winner of 8 gold medals at the prestigious Chelsea Flower Show. And Steve's article features advice that David shared at the 1992 Northwest Flower and Garden Show in Seattle. Here's what David said. One of the great tricks of landscape design is to create a sense of mystery and surprise as you move from one space into another. If you see everything at once, it becomes uninteresting. But if you break the space into individual rooms, it becomes inherently more interesting. England has some remarkable gardens, but the average backyard is a lot more mundane than most people imagine. We're a nation of plant lovers, but we're certainly not a nation of garden designers. And a lot of our gardens are too busy and overcomplicated. Next, David offered the following tips for people thinking of making a garden. He says, don't let your garden end up a muddle of hard and soft landscaping. Take time to draw up a plan. Most people tend to rush off to the garden center the first fine day, stick everything in the trunk, and then wonder where to plant it all. Before planting anything, put in all the hard landscaping, all the decking, walling, paving, the bones and composition of the garden. Plants will bring the garden to life, softening the hard surfaces. And David advises that we keep the design and the planting simple. He says many gardens suffer from overcomplication and gimmicks. Be careful not to use conflicting materials that can be restless on the eye and hard on the pocket. And resist the temptation to plant too many different things. The well-planted border has a limited number of species that relate well to one another. And he advises that there are many foliage textures, colors, and shapes that give interest throughout the year. You have to think about foliage and texture as well as flower. And finally, remember what Gertrude Jekyll, the famous Edwardian garden designer, taught. She said, hot colors, reds and yellows, foreshorten the space through their vibrancy. If you put a pot of bright red flowers at the bottom of the garden, your eye will go straight to it. Use hot colors close to the viewpoint and cooler colors farther away. It gives a nice feeling of space, and small gardens can be made to feel larger. Ultimately, David suggests to do your homework before planting. Find out if a plant likes sun or shade and how big it will grow. He writes, I'm a great believer in growing what does well in my climate. I won't plant things that are going to look unhappy. I'd much sooner have something that thrives than something that's good for a couple of seasons and then gets knocked out by bad weather. Don't bite off more than you can chew in one season, and take a few years to build your garden. Great advice. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with The Daily Gardener. If you want to read even more botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories, biographies, and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can easily share your gardener greetings or book submissions by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove in Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.